Vladimir Putin is watching his empire crumble from the inside out. The Kremlin is in a total state of panic as Ukrainian drones just tore through the heart of Moscow. This isn't just a minor skirmish anymore. It is a full-scale dismantling of the Russian war machine on its own doorstep by the defenders of democracy. For years, the world watched as traditional sanctions struggled to stop the carnage. Now, President Zelensky is implementing what he calls long-range sanctions. These aren't delivered by diplomats in suits or debated in global summits. They are delivered by Firepoint long-range drones with a reach of over 3,000 kilometers. Just hours ago, the Kapotnya oil refinery in Moscow was turned into a blackened shell. This facility provides a third of the capital's fuel, and it is now dead. Imagine the scene in Moscow as the sky turns dark and a terrifying phenomenon begins. Residents are reporting literal black rain falling from the clouds above the city as the refinery burns. It is sooty, chemical precipitation caused by the incineration of massive fuel reserves. This is the reality of the war finally coming home to the aggressor. While the Russian regime tries to spin this as a minor incident, the evidence on the ground tells a much more catastrophic story. The truth is unavoidable. Let's play this clip of the Kapotnya district as the primary distillation unit goes up in flames. Watch how the sky just gets swallowed by the thick smoke. Look at that chaos. That is the AVT-6 unit, the vital organ of the refinery, being absolutely shredded by precision strikes that bypassed every defense. Putin's air defenses are proving to be a complete and pathetic joke. These drones didn't just slip through, they dominated the airspace of the capital city. The refinery has suspended operations indefinitely. This isn't a temporary glitch. It's a structural collapse of Moscow's energy security in real time. We are seeing the total paralysis of a primary fuel source for millions of people. This is what happens when a deranged regime pushes a sovereign nation too far. The long-range sanctions campaign is systematically targeting the Russian military's jugular. It's force, not just finance, that is now strangling the Kremlin's ability to fight. Zelensky is making it clear that no corner of Russia is safe from the consequences of their vile invasion. Even the deep Tumen region is now within striking distance. We are witnessing a historic pivot in modern warfare. High-tech, long-range drones are doing what entire armies couldn't achieve in 2 years of conventional fighting. The Russian-installed puppets are scrambling to find a response. But how do you respond when your elite air defenses are being chiseled away day by day? It's not just the refineries that are burning. It is the very myth of Russian invincibility that is turning to ash before our eyes. Let's roll the tape on the frantic response from Moscow officials, trying to explain the foam snow used to fight these massive chemical fires. They are literally trying to cover up their failure with mountains of firefighting foam. It is a grotesque metaphor for the entire Russian war effort since day one. They can't hide the black rain from the citizens. They can't hide the fact that their fuel tanks are exploding deep inside their own borders. This is a systemic dismantling of their logistical backbone. And while Moscow burns, the occupied territories are feeling the heat even more intensely. The Kremlin is caught in a trap of its own making. Every lie they told about their special operation is blowing up in their faces tonight. We are seeing the true cost of fascist aggression. It is a one-way street toward total economic and military disaster for the Putin regime. World Decoded is here to track every explosion and every moment of this regime's collapse. We don't look away from the hard facts of the battlefield. The situation in occupied Crimea is even more dire than what's happening in the capital. The fuel crisis there has reached a definitive breaking point. When we return to the details, you'll see how the maritime and rail alternatives are being wiped off the map. The isolation is almost complete. The Kerch Strait is no longer a safe passage for the Russian military. It's a graveyard for their equipment and their desperate attempts at resupply. Let's look closer at the Firepoint drones themselves. These machines are the nightmare fuel for every Russian commander sitting in a bunker right now. They are bypassing sophisticated S-400 systems like they don't even exist. It is a humiliation on a global stage for Russian technology. The disruption is total and unforgiving. From the Tumen region to the heart of the capital, the energy heart of Russia is bleeding out. And as the fuel stops flowing, the tanks on the front line will follow suit. This is the endgame of the strategic drone offensive. We are watching a bully get punched in the mouth after 2 years of terror. It is a moment of justice the world is finally witnessing. The resilience of the Ukrainian people is being matched by their technological brilliance. They are redefining what it means to defend democracy against a tyrant. But the strike on Kapotnya is only the first phase of this massive June offensive. The real blow is happening further south at the coast. The logistics of the entire Black Sea fleet are currently being incinerated. Wait until you see what happened at the Kerch Marine Terminal. The ferries that were supposed to be the logistics backbone are being systematically hunted down. The Slavyanin and the Elena II didn't stand a chance. Russian state media is in an absolute meltdown over these strikes. They are calling it terror while their own missiles rain on Ukrainian civilians every night. It is the height of hypocrisy from a regime that has forgotten what it's like to face a real opponent. Now the war is in their backyards. Zelensky's team isn't just looking for symbolic wins. They are looking for the total disruption of the Russian military's entire fuel capacity. Without fuel, the tanks don't move and the soldiers don't eat. Without fuel, the jets don't fly. The Kremlin's offensive is grinding to a halt. We are witnessing the result of months of careful planning and indigenous technology. The Firepoint drone is the ultimate game changer in this conflict. As the smoke clears over Moscow, the question isn't if more strikes are coming. The question is where the next explosion will occur. The vulnerability is exposed and the shield is broken. Vladimir Putin is realizing that his fortress is made of glass and it is shattering. The people of Moscow are getting a first-hand look at the consequences of their leader's choices. The black rain is a warning of the future. While the capital reels from the energy crisis, the strategic chokehold on Crimea is tightening by the hour. The supply lines are severed. This is just the beginning of the most sophisticated drone campaign in history. The Russian military is about to be completely cut off from the world. They thought they could hide behind the Kerch Bridge, but that lifeline is now a ghost of its former self. The Kremlin's last desperate gamble for logistical survival has now turned into a total graveyard. We are talking about the systematic liquidation of the ferry lines that Russia relied on for armor and fuel. The Elena II and the Slavyanin are now functionally erased from the theater of this war. These vessels were the backbone of the entire Crimean occupation's supply chain. Without them, there is no way to transport the heavy tanks and fuel trucks that the damaged bridge can no longer safely support. Take a look at Port Kavkaz right now because the evidence is absolutely staggering. This wasn't a lucky shot. It was a surgical removal of the regime's ability to sustain its failing military presence today. Check out this satellite imagery showing the aftermath of the strike on the marine terminal. 5 out of the 7 massive fuel tanks were turned into a raging chemical inferno in a single dark night. You can see the charred remains of what used to be the primary hub for the Black Sea Fleet's fuel transfers. This is a total collapse of the maritime supply line for the pathetic occupiers. It is honestly pathetic to watch the so-called world-class Russian air defenses fail so spectacularly. They promised these systems could intercept anything, yet they are being dismantled like a cheap toy by Ukrainian drones. This is what the Ukrainian command calls chiseling, and it is a masterclass in modern warfare. They aren't just hitting targets, they are stripping away the radar shield before delivering the final knockout blow. Look at the data regarding the S-400 radar stations and the Panzer systems. 4 major radar hubs and 2 advanced defense units were vaporized on both sides of the strait in recent drone swarm attacks. This creates massive blind spots in the Russian defense grid that Ukraine is now exploiting with absolute precision. The regime media wants you to believe they are in control, but it is actually pure chaos. When you destroy the radar, you blind the beast, and right now, the Russian military is stumbling in the dark. They cannot see the swarms of Firepoint drones until they are already on the target. These new Firepoint drones are a nightmare for the Kremlin, boasting a range that exceeds 3,000 kilometers. That means no corner of the occupied territories, or even deep Russia, is safe from justice now. We have to weave this together to understand the scale of the strategic trap being set. It isn't just about one port. It is about the total isolation of the entire occupied Crimean peninsula today. By severing the ferries and crippling the port, Ukraine has effectively turned Crimea into a logistical island. The Russian troops stationed there are now realizing they are trapped with no way to retreat or hide. We've seen reports of the black rain in Moscow, but in the south, the situation is even more dire. The air is thick with the smell of burning fuel meant for the frontline war machine. Let's play this clip of the aftermath at the terminal so you can see the scale of the destruction. The fire was so intense that specialized foam was needed just to keep everything from melting completely. Notice how there is absolutely no mention of this on state-controlled propaganda networks. They are desperate to hide the fact that their elite defenses are being treated like tissue paper by the Ukrainian drone ingenuity. It's grotesque to see how the Kremlin continues to lie to its own soldiers about the safety of these routes. They are sending men into a trap while the fuel they need is literally evaporating. This is the reality of the long-range sanctions campaign that President Zelensky has unleashed. Kinetic force is now doing the work that the international community's paperwork failed to accomplish for over 2 very long years. The goal here is a total disruption of the military's capacity to breathe, and fuel is the oxygen of war. Without it, the entire Russian machine in the south will simply grind to a halt. This isn't just some minor shortage. It's a total systemic collapse of Russian authority in the occupied territories. We're seeing the Kremlin's puppets enter a state of pure panic as the reality of their isolation finally sets in. On June 21st, Sergei Aksyonov, the Russian installed head of the Crimean occupation, issued a desperate and historic decree. He has officially banned all fuel sales to civilians and non-state entities across the entire peninsula, effective immediately. If you're a civilian living under this brutal regime, you can no longer even buy gas for your car. The remaining fuel is being strictly rationed for the military and emergency services only. This is the face of a failing, pathetic occupation that has run out of options. When a government tells its people they no longer have access to basic necessities, it has lost all control. Take a look at the evidence of why they're this desperate. Satellite imagery from the Kerch Marine Oil Terminal in Port Kavkaz confirms absolute total devastation of their primary fuel storage and infrastructure. 5 of the 7 main fuel tanks have been completely incinerated by these precision drone strikes. This terminal was the primary hub keeping the Black Sea Fleet from running dry in the region. With the Kerch ferries like the Elena II and the Slavoyanin now crippled, the logistics backbone is snapped. Russia has no way to move heavy military equipment or massive fuel stocks across the water. They are trapped, and the only option left for Putin's forces is the dangerous northern route. This is the R-280 highway that runs through occupied Mariupol, but it isn't a safe haven for them. It's a carefully laid choke point trap designed by Ukrainian strategists to maximize the carnage. As those fuel tankers crawl along that highway, Ukrainian drones are picking them off one by one in broad daylight. It's like shooting fish in a barrel for the defenders of democracy, fighting for their land. This level of strategic incompetence from a supposedly world-class military is truly and utterly staggering to witness. It shows how much of the Kremlin's power was built on a foundation of lies and bluster. I know watching this kind of high-stakes conflict can be incredibly draining on your mental state. If you're feeling the weight of the world, you need something to help you stay sharp and focused. That's why I rely on my daily supplement routine to keep my energy levels consistent. It's about maintaining your edge so you can keep fighting for the truth alongside us every day. Back to the front lines, where Russian air defense is being systematically chiseled away by Ukraine. Zelensky has confirmed the destruction of multiple S-400 radar stations and several Pantsir systems recently. They are creating massive blind spots in the Russian defense grid that simply cannot be repaired or replaced. This allows subsequent drone swarms to fly right through the front door of Russia's most sensitive military sites. The black rain falling over Moscow districts is the literal fallout of this failed, vile invasion. The Kropotnya refinery provides a third of Moscow's fuel and is now offline after the latest strikes. Putin thought he could bring war to his neighbors without any consequences in his own capital. Now, the residents of Moscow are breathing in the soot of their own failed ambitions. We are witnessing a historic pivot where the victim has become the strategic and dominant aggressor. Ukraine is not just defending, they are dismantling the very heart of the Russian war machine. Well, this happens when a fascist regime underestimates the resolve of a people fighting for existence. The infrastructure of the occupation is crumbling before our eyes, and there is no way to stop it. We have to keep this pressure on and tell the stories the corporate media avoids. Truth is the most powerful weapon we have against these authoritarian thugs and their lies. I need you to step up and help us reach our next major subscriber milestone. Help us hit 7 million subscribers. Join our Substack for deep dive analysis. Thank you for standing with us. Stay sharp and keep fighting. We are the future.